Welcome to this edition of What the Fuck Happenings here. Not inmendham. Whatever. Didn't think about that. I was thinking about other things. Didn't think about where I'm supposed to be or who I'm supposed to be or what. Just because. Still transitioning from my perspective. Still haven't accepted my new circumstances, but whatever. Whether I accept them or not, they exist. So, onto the show. Just making sure it's recording and all that crap. So, somewhere in this conversation, the word efficiency should come up, so I figured I'll throw some images of that in here. But it's really not about efficiency, it's more about the fact that chaos is an illusion, and that we're all living in this world where, you know, there's all these things manufacturing outcomes, and we don't really play a role in the we sense. You know, obviously your experiences are interacting with your experiences. So you had experiences in the past, they put you in a position to react. They bent springs inside of you, and now some new experience happens and the springs are set, you know, in terms of your reaction. So it's all just a bunch of reflexes. Reflexes programmed by reflexive actions in the past, and that's all you really have, you know. So you start off with this genetic crap, whatever it's worth, and you know, then you're plopped into a place, geography, and circumstances, and interactions begin, and you become a byproduct of those interactions. And it all seems like chaos, in the sense you can't follow the bouncing ball at all, hardly at all. But that's really not true. I don't want to say that, because we have so much information about what kind of stuff will do what kind of stuff. You know, what kind of crap you do to somebody and you end up with a fucking deviant psychology. And what kind of things you expose people to and all that kind of stuff, and people just want to pretend that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you're playing video games all day where you kill people and it's fun. Probably matters. You know, it's you know, that kind of 2 + 2 stuff gets lost somewhere in all this political crap, where people have all kinds of agendas bent on, and their agendas are bent by their springs, you know, their perspective. I'm a disenfranchised white person, so I'm bitter. You know, I lost the breeding war, you know. And you know, whatever it is, you know, people are seeing things from their Jewish perspective, or their Muslim perspective, or their Christian, you know, their atheist perspective, and they're pretty myopic, you know, in terms of what's in it for me, what's in it for my side. Instead of just sticking to honest arguments, then it all becomes a bunch of dishonest arguments trying to achieve some sort of outcome with minimum amount of effort, which is the, you know, you can't say that's wrong. Oh, I gotta fix my throat, so I think I'll do that. Interruptions are fun, right? Just part of the whole, what does that do to your brain? What does the interruption do to your brain? What is it, how does that affect you? You know, I mean, it's all part of the calculation. You know, I didn't dress for the video. Oh, it's part of the calculation for somebody. Somehow the words will mean more, you know, if I was dressed for the occasion, had my proper Frankenstein suit on or something. Well, anyway, we'll get back to that crap in a moment. Alright, should be restored. A sip of tea, and now my perspective has been tearized. It's been polluted. Okay, maybe for the better, for the worst. Who knows? So anyway, I've talked about this kind of crap before. It kind of sucks that we're being controlled by butterfly wings kind of bullshit. You know, these random events that aren't random happening in the world, and all of this crap is kind of just manipulating us, and we can't see it. You know, it's too tense and too fine a grain. So all we see is the sand. You know, we don't see all the, we don't feel the mass of all of it, or the you know, the substance of it and the layers of it. And so all we can do is this probability thing. I mean, all we can do is say, well, what's the odds? You know, odds are wearing your helmet when you're riding the motorcycle is a good idea. It's going to save you more than it's going to kill you, like seat belts. But I don't like seat belts, right? So, you know, is that somehow, should that define the truth, or define the fact that, oh, well, I'm going to ignore probabilities when I want to? And so that's part of the whole logical breakdown. So that's what I complain about, is that people don't see the obvious kinds of logical breakdowns because they're too busy defending capitalism or some kind of socialism. And they become extremist in those kind of perspectives, like it's a cure-all or something, like it always works and you never have to do it in some sort of controlled and, you know, fancy way. Like there's more than one gear. So that icon there with the gears, you know, there's always the really important gears, and the rest of the gears are kind of who cares. You know, if the important ones are working, then the thing will work. And so you know, that's where things go all wrong. I mean, I haven't done an economic video in a while, and I probably should, because you know, doom economically is still sitting there waiting, and it's, you know, kind of all based on this thing, inheritance, that I've been complaining about forever, and that it doesn't work, and that it's a really bad idea. It's really bad capitalism to inherit it. Okay, that's taking all the Darwinian function out of capitalism, and just kind of destroys the mechanism of the game, especially when there's so much being inherited, and it's all this protected inheritance, in the sense that, like, the government came in to bail out the bankers, and maybe a bunch of inheritance wealth there and all that other stuff at jeopardy, and the junk bonds, and they basically bankrupted, you know, all kinds of mechanisms that are supposed to protect us from failure, like FDIC insurance. It doesn't mean anything. It's, if we ever need it, there's not anything there. There's no insurance. So your money's just as vulnerable to being inflated out of any value. And the real game of this whole rich man thing is, as long as they don't spend all the money, okay, they can have all the money, you know, on paper. They can have pieces of paper. The government can just give them money. And as long as they don't spend it, okay, it's harmless, right? I mean, the government could print $1 billion, throw it somewhere, okay, where no one can spend it. It's not going to matter. But they're all deriving income off of it. So they're living off this huge, big, giant fake money, you know, this bullshit money. And if that bullshit money ever tried to get into the economy and started bidding against, like, you know, being used to purchase, then the prices would all go sky high, because they'd outbid you on everything with that stored money. And that's the threat. And so everybody thinks the threat's dead, it can't come back, it's not going to exist. It's just, it's huge. It's a monstrous threat. You know, it's based on this idea of having, you know, stored money that you just live off of. And but in a crisis, you're not going to live off your stored money, especially if you know, it all ends up being a debt crisis, in the sense that once somebody goes bankrupt, then everybody goes bankrupt. And that was sort of what the bankers were screaming about, you know, whatever it was, almost 10 years ago. It's amazing that they've kept it afloat so long. You know, and that the government had to come in and rescue. What they're really rescuing is that concept that if you allow this to go bankrupt, everything goes bankrupt, and all that money that shouldn't be there, all that stored wealth, starts getting spent. So again, like I said, I mean, I could take $1 trillion, $1 zillion of government money, and I could, you know, if I put it somewhere, like I print it and I don't put it in the economy, can't hurt anybody. But clearly lots of people can live off of the interest it can derive by flooding the market with it. So it's all debt money that's in the stock market. That's why it keeps going up, is because the government keeps creating debt. The debt is somebody else's wealth. You know, that's just the way it works. The debt isn't, You don't have the debt with some other planet or something. The debt's internal. You know, this guy owes this guy. You know, that kind of thing. So, well, anyway, so a little bit of economics, just thrown in, because I haven't done it in a while. So, but I mean, those are the obvious gears. I mean, the obvious gears is that the capitalism is only supposed to really work if you allow this fair fight to take place, and the more efficient earns the victory. But again, there's all kinds of little fixes you can make to that system and say it's inefficient. There's certain basic inefficiencies in it, just like there's basic inefficiencies in evolution, where it doesn't get to the efficient part very efficiently. Okay, you take a huge risk to gain efficiency sometimes, in terms of you're vulnerable for a few thousand years as a species to acquire some new stability that's more efficient. Where was I going with that? Well, yeah, just the fact that it's, competition is expensive. You have to pay for the swords and the knives and you got to clean up the dead bodies, and so when people praise capitalism, well, capitalism creates all those empty buildings, and all those empty buildings are waste. It means a whole bunch of money and resources were spent. People's labor was wasted. Moving stuff into the store, not selling it, then moving all the stuff back out again. Somebody had to do that work, and all that work was not very productive. Nobody got rich on that, in a sense, it doesn't make anything work better. So it's like most jobs, I would argue, now are connivery jobs. Jobs just trying to sell. Snooker, whatever shenanigans. Most people aren't working doing something honorable, like just digging holes and filling the holes, or some sort of productive work, like internet infrastructure or roads and sidewalks and all that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not saying these guys do that work very efficiently anymore, because of unions and government employment and all that kind of crap. These guys have gotten kind of sloppy and lazy. But that work is so much more productive than some idiot trying to shyster somebody into buying something they don't really need at a price that's twice as high as what they could buy it for if they did a little bit of research on the internet or something. They're just reselling some other product and stealing their money, basically. And there's that's the nature of all this advertising, these gimmicks, these little icons. So you could almost talk that there's a certain efficiency in trying to engineer your little icon to be the best little way of representing something and manipulating people, and have the right colors and the right little things that people associate with and identify with, and all that kind of crap. But then in a culture like this one, that's gotten so mixed, it's got old people and young people, and it's got people who don't speak the language, and people, well, mostly. And I mean, I saw a statistic or somewhere or something, like Dallas is like 40%, what do they call it? Well, anyway, it's Hispanic. And then it's like 20% black and 20% white or something like that. It's kind of surprising that, wow, it's gotten that out of control. That's real. That's a real transition in terms of the culture and everything else. And again, people can't see the obvious gear. The ones who have to defend the leftist perspective, they just pretend it doesn't mean anything. Well, yeah, as a practical fact, it does mean something. It's going to have an effect. It means the future will be, it's a cause that will have effects, and you can't pretend it doesn't. So you have to just know what you're stepping into when you step into it. You can't just pretend everything's going to stay the same that way, because it's obviously you've created a huge difference. Huge differences lead to other differences. So, well, whatever. Don't want to get into those politic crap, but anyway, my mistake. Sorry. But it's hard to talk about something like efficiency without talking about how inefficient, our whole civilization has become in terms of what it's endorsing and what it's condemning, and how it reacts. Again, I could just, all of this hysteria about vaping, a tiny number of people affected in some negative way, millions of people affected in a very positive way, in the sense that they're now absorbing their addictive substance in a much healthier manner. So let's ignore all that good, crucify it. Why? Because we can't, they can't figure out how to tax it, legally. And so, what's the rationale when, 10,000 people are killed every year from tainted seafood? They don't, no, not even close to a little bit of hysteria. I mean, flu shots, all these things, and they don't say something simple like, well, maybe you ought not eat seafood. It's kind of dangerous. Well, so some sort of something, and it's like nothing. They're not doing anything, about that tragedy. It's not on any radar anywhere. You're saying why? Oh, because it's a popular vice or something. It doesn't even make sense. It's so obviously something they ought to fix. But that comes down to the GMO stuff, and the irradiation would have, irradiating some foods was a very good idea. It's, perfectly rational, kills the microbes, the radiation dissipates rather quickly, and the food's safe to eat, and blah, blah, blah. But no, let's not do it because it's rational, because it's somehow scary. And, there's just no efficiency in how people are so reactive to things. All snakes are poisonous kind of thing. They're just hysterically narrow in their perspective, hysterically viewing the world from their, privilege, or from their poverty, or from their religion, or from something. They're just too biased by their personal experience, let's say, or their personal lack of experience, in the sense of their apparently they just haven't gone through this little process you have to go through to be logical, I suppose, or something. I don't know how people become so illogical, just because the foundations of logic aren't very complicated. Like, do unto others as you'd have others do unto you is just such a simple concept. You don't need anybody to even suggest it to already think of it yourself, I would imagine, right? I mean, it's just so obvious to say something like, there for the grace of God go I. Okay, so I would argue that was one of those things that happened to me early in my life that apparently didn't happen to other people, where very early in my life I saw people in trouble, having one leg or some other kind of crap, and or wheelchair, whatever, and I already knew somehow, I mean, it occurred to me. I certainly didn't believe that it was God's choice to throw them in there, like they did some crime and that's why they're in the wheelchair. They committed some crime against the God, and the God willed them to be crippled or something. That didn't make any sense at all, so I threw that idea out. Even if I wasn't sure there wasn't a God, I was kind of sure it wasn't that crazy. So you're left with kind of luck. You got to be lucky, and I guess that's what you figure out is you see people driving real fast, and you say, well, they didn't crash, and then you say, what's the difference between the one that's crashed and smashed on the side of the road, and you drive by it and everybody's dead and crushed and all that stuff, and not being crushed? And I kind of figured out that you just got to get lucky. You got to crash the right way, and this doesn't have anything to do with the nature of your crime. There's no consistency to it, and that I'm vulnerable to it. Everybody's vulnerable to it. I mean, maybe there was lots of different things, different thoughts that made that apparent to me. Like a plane could crash on anybody's house. I knew it wasn't like planes picked certain people who were bad people, and the plane picked that house to crash on. You know, that kind of crap. I knew that wasn't how it worked. Maybe it was hurricanes. You know, I lived in the South, Louisiana, as a kid, and you know, hurricanes were kind of nasty and threatening, and they plow trees right through people's houses. And I sort of had the perception that if a tree hit your house, it's going to kill you or something. So it was kind of scary. It was real. It was a threat, I guess I could say. And you know, I knew it wasn't. You know, I knew there was no other reason than, oh, they had a tree that was 10 feet closer to their house. They had it was a big enough tree. It was I knew it wasn't a good reason that one house was smashed to pieces and then the house next to it was perfectly fine. I mean, I knew there wasn't some logic to it, you know, reasoning, a good reason. It was just because, you know, circumstances, or however we want to put it, you know, this vague idea of the chaos. And that, yeah, the idea would be is don't live next to trees. I mean, certainly there's things you can do to prevent, okay, and you say, well, yeah, you know, get rid of the tree. We had a big giant tree, but you know, it's cost money to get rid of trees, right? My father wouldn't spend the money, so we all lived in the back of the house when there was a hurricane. But anyway, the tree you could look right straight up through, but, you know, climbing at the bottom. It's kind of neat. But anyway, but all those little experiences add up to your perception of what kind of world you're walking through. So early on, I sort of had that there for the grace of God go I kind of perspective, that the shit that happens is real shit. I wouldn't want it to happen to me, and the only thing that's preventing it happening for me is I got to get lucky. I mean, or I got to avoid trees, and I got to figure out how to, you know. And so those were thoughts that ran through my head. I can't say I was obsessed with it because I didn't do non-reckless things in my personal life, so I guess I hadn't fully appreciated the lesson learned. But I'm just saying the lesson was already there, okay, that I guess I hadn't figured out how to productively use my knowledge of danger, because I guess I still kind of thought it was random and uncontrollable. But anyway, don't need to go into that much detail. But the point is that the principle was already there. The idea was already there that, you know, you can judge things, but there's no point because you're going to be sitting in the seat that's going to get judged eventually. I guess that kind of idea already existed. And if you're going to fix something, you have to fix it for everybody, not just you. I guess that was the other lesson, right? That there's a certain greater value in preventing hurricanes than there is in cutting down trees, maybe. That kind of thing. So those kind of thoughts were something I would spend some time contemplating. And that gets to this whole efficiency thing. And so my more advanced understanding would say that the real evil in terms of people is this what's in it for me crap. That isn't going to work, because then everybody just says, I don't have a tree, I don't have a problem. Therefore the problem is now solved because it's solved for me. So if you're immune to a disease, you say, fuck the people with the disease, I don't want to pay for their treatment or health or care, you know, all that kind of stuff. So you just take advantage of your advantages and do nothing to realize that the obligation exists to fix the normal state, the average state, not just your state. Okay, I'll be back. Yeah, it should be back. Such. Yeah, no, I wasn't really gone very long from your perspective. But anyway, we'll advance the images, let's say, and continue. So I don't want to imply there's any, religion has any value. It picks up on some obvious things, and even the idea of, saying something like, for the grace of God go I kind of thing. It's not even in the Bible. That's not even in It's not even in the religion as a concept, because that would it implies, that God would have to be responsible for all of this judgment thing, and that He's doing it in the active world, rather than in some, later. You have to get punished later, after after the crimes or something. And you know how to, but it just doesn't work as a, writing it in the Bible wouldn't make much sense. But it's just a way of understanding that, the randomness of existence, in the sense that your good fortune and all of this, whatever, any advantages and disadvantages are just doled out, to all of us. And none of us are, didn't ask for it. You don't get what you bought. You didn't. I'm sorry, kind of inarticulate. Struggling with vocabulary. So you just arrive here. I didn't do something before I got here to deserve, okay, not having my father die, for example, or not living in horrible poverty, or, I didn't earn anything I got, and I didn't earn anything I got that's negative either. Shit just happens. But see, saying something like shit just happens is a totally it's the opposite of what I'm trying to say, is that so much of this shit is so fixable and so preventable, and that's the part that's just, there's just no excuse for, in a sense, because humans shouldn't be this stupid. So the real point that I want to get to is, why is it so difficult to explain that to other people, to get them to understand how much waste they're just allowing for no good reason, because they can't spend 5 minutes understanding the concept rather than just reacting to the word or something, like the words socialism and capitalism, all this reaction shit, instead of figuring out what's the right answer. What does the civilization need? Where's the find the waste and plug the holes kind of thing? And some of the holes are just so obvious, in terms of the efficiency of things. But the difficulty is some answers aren't so, you can't apply them, because people just don't have the stomach for doing reality. So I could bring up like the cat example, the insane inefficiency of spending so much money, hundreds of dollars, I don't know what the average, it might even be over thousands of dollars per cat, okay, to do this relocation thing, this silly, nip their ear and cut their nuts off and then throw them back on the street to eat garbage thing. That's just so stupid. When you should spend the money on preventing cats from being born, that is, stopping the breeders and the sloppiness of the ownership system, tightening all that crap up to prevent, these strays from repopulating kind of perpetually. Some more efficient way to eliminate the problem by preventing the problem, and the way you can prevent the problem is to get those female cats off the streets, and they just it's not efficient to do it at $2,000 a cat. It's more efficient to humanely kill them. That's the simple truth, and it's unpleasant and nasty. Alright, so that sort of brings up, I know somebody commented on the stupid news story where some wacky lady pointed out how we should be eating babies. Clearly it wouldn't solve any problem, okay? The problem is preventing babies, so it's just another, it's another serious subject turned trivial by this excessively narrow and scapegoaty rhetoric It's just totally unproductive. This whole black and white argument thing just doesn't work. You have to make some concessions to the facts, but people just won't make any concessions to the truth. So let's see. So yeah, so my point is that I'm sitting in a position where I'm saying, well, why is it so difficult to find efficient ways for people to understand simple concepts like the "there for the grace of God go I" thing, the idea that you're just sitting here and you're sitting on a pile of luck. If you've gotten anything out of your life, you got it because you were lucky. I mean, you could think you had something to do with it, but there's no you that had something to do with it. You're just experiences. And without those experiences, you wouldn't have been the man you are. And it's just the truth. If you didn't have the father, or you didn't have this, or you didn't have that, you can always point to the things that made you who you are. And you were lucky to have that. It wasn't like you earned it somehow. So even if you have a great deal of character and you're very honorable and you're very diligent and you go to great effort to acquire knowledge, or you go to great effort to acquire skills, all of that effort and the fact that you went to it was all part of the fact that you were programmed to do that. I mean, you had to do that because that's the kind of person you became. And other people don't choose to do something else. Their ability to choose, they don't even have the ability to choose, is the real point. And the only distinction is again this simple little thing like, well, how could they not understand this whole you got to be lucky thing? How can they not see that you're kind of sentencing yourself to the same system? It's again, how can the white slave owner in the past, how could they look out that window and see the people being abused and not realize, well, I'm going to be dead someday, and all there's going to be is this world, and this world is going to be 50% these people being abused, or 70% people being abused, and 30% privilege. And if I was to be thrown back into the world again, to play the game again, what are the odds I'm going to be one of them rather than one of these privileged kings, one of these nobles? Well, the odds are you're going to be one of the people getting pissed on rather than one of the people doing the peeing. And is that difficult logic? No, it's really simple logic. So whatever you make the world with your what's in it for me crap, you're going to live in that world. As a practical matter, the same kind of bullshit that you went through is going to be gone through again. It's going to be another brain that's sensitive and that has its own sensibilities and fears and strengths and weaknesses, and it's going to be a different combination of those things, but it's going to be the same kind of experience fundamentally. The idea of stress is going to be a real thing. Now maybe they'll stress over different things, but the idea of it will be the same. It's like whether you're rooting for the Mets or you're rooting for the Yankees or you're whatever. Does it really make a difference? Is the rooting process any different? Because you change the color of the uniforms, or how square the stadium is, or some other kind of crap. No, it doesn't matter. So again, it's just this idea that there's people do engineer outcomes, and in terms of selling things, these certain formulas work, and I guess there's certain formulas that work in this realm of philosophical interaction, and they've learned how to play the game, I guess, to find sucker words or sucker phrases. I mean, these things like the Bible they're so inarticulate. I mean, it's such a pile of jargon and mush, and it's all over the place. I mean, 1 minute, I mean, there's nothing you can say has any relation to your real experience in life. barely. I mean, any stories, any part of it, that you wonder, how can it be a compelling book? But that's the point, is that nobody reads the book. They just, put it in some kind of flowery language that has the hook in it, of some kind of hook, like, well, if you don't believe, you're going to hell. If you don't pretend to believe anyway, if you don't make some pretense to acknowledge the existence of this crack in the sidewalk, it's threatening to break your mother's back. And so, you have to deal with it. You have to play along, whether you believe or not believe, but you can't take the chance that you're wrong, that kind of thing. So is it fear? Is it, again, some notion that, well, other people need to know they're going to hell, because they would break all the rules if they didn't think they were going to hell. So even though you're thinking already how, well, that's all bullshit, I know I'm not going to hell, but other people need to think so. Like they're going to be any more convinced than you're unconvinced. It's just, it's just kind of, it's just not, it's broken logic. To think something that didn't work on you is going to work on somebody else, and that they're going to do anything other than the same thing you're doing, which is pretending, to play along. Let's see, what else? So I'm sitting in a position where I'm saying there's so much wrong with how people are being human, right? That they're really not appreciating the extent of our responsibility here as the smartest organism on the planet, that we have some obligation to fix all of these huge inefficiencies, and they really are huge. So I'll go back to the biology again for just a minute or two. The fact that the real consciousnesses are existing as feral cats. That's, if you were coming back as a consciousness, the odds are you're coming back as some mammal other than a human being. Some organism other than a human being. And that's the life you're going to live. Those are the experiences you're going to have, kind of thing. Those are the ones that will exist in the future. After you're gone, there's going to be experiences still happening, and you can't be logical and tell me you think they're fundamentally inferior to your experiences. That somehow those consciousnesses aren't really conscious because they don't know what I know, and they didn't have my mommy, and they didn't have my daddy, and blah 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 blah. Somehow you're doing something so much better than the rest of the feeling things. That your arousal or passion is just so much more real than theirs is, or that theirs will be. So that's the simple point, that no, it's still going to exist, the game is still being played, the things, the squirming little organisms, or the worms, are still there, and they're, this pretense that you were the golden worm and the rest of the worms are bronze or some inferior metal. It's just such bullshit. But that's really how a lot of people are thinking, I suppose. Just by you can't be this fucked up. You can't make a world this screwed up, without people thinking that way. That just doesn't matter. I don't have to... it's this back to the clean your room Peterson bullshit. I don't have to clean the street or the sidewalks or any other piece of the world. I can filth anywhere I wish, and I can break and fuck up anything, and it somehow, if it doesn't affect me, if it's something I leave behind, it's not a problem. Alright, so there's a transition from there to where, so I was going to give the biological example just because it popped in my head. So this is the kind of stuff that, over time you do enough of these kind of things, it does all add up to something. So I was pondering seahorses, and they have this interesting idea of where the female, the eggs are fertilized in the female, and then the female deposits the egg in the male, and he deals with the rest of the pregnancy. And you're saying, why would something be that fucked up? That's just too fucked up. And it seems kind of inefficient, you know, this process of exchanging and all that kind of crap. But then when I thought about it, I said, no, that makes perfectly good sense, right? Because she can't be pregnant twice. You know, she can't get pregnant until she gets rid of the eggs. And so by getting rid of the eggs, depositing somewhere else, you know, after they're fertilized, she can grow new eggs and she can get pregnant again much quicker. So in that sense, they can double the efficiency of their reproduction by physically sharing the process of pregnancy. Sure. So you're sort of in a way cutting it in half in terms of how long it takes to maturate your young by merely getting rid of the transition time, getting rid of the recovery time, in a sense, and the preparation for the, you know, doing it over again. So there's a, you know, you can see, so there's one advantage you can come up with evolutionarily why that would be something you would do that could make any sense at all. But then even figuring out how, you know, I've sort of gone into, you know, you can sort of figure out the reason why the penis was invented. You know, the evolution, you could probably draw a picture of that one. But it's a little more difficult to understand how the first seahorses who did this in the sense they've had a genetic code that compelled them to do something like that. So that would be the harder one to draw, and it would obviously, I think, come down to some organism that's further down the line, you know, something before the seahorse did it. There was a whole group of organisms that did it, but they no longer exist. So that lineage is dead, you know, and probably for a good reason, because just like I said, it's a little too many steps, and so that's probably why it doesn't make you stronger in the long run. Except it works for the seahorses who are able to make it work over the long run. Well, anyway, so just thinking about those kind of things give you such a perspective and sort of just understanding that every little bit of us has been engineered by this process, that this really has been over millions of years, hundreds of millions of years of this grind, you know, of this arrival and destruction, you know, over and over and over, and we just don't have any memory of it. You know, we don't, you know, just as I can't feel the pain of 7 billion people on Earth right now. But again, that was another example of just why I'm having this conversation, is because these are the things I did, and these are the things that once you do them, okay, I mean, once you can't undo. You can't undo once you're aware of this idea, this concept of it existing. You can't just pretend it doesn't exist anymore. How to say that? I mean, you know, once you have knowledge of the elements, the periodic table or something, you can't take the knowledge out of your head, and so when you see something, say, oh yeah, that's copper and that's this, you know, you can identify it, you know what it is. Yeah, so you know, when I would go to sleep at night, I would do this pondering of what's happening right now. You know, my brain would play that game, and it's just such a dangerous game to play in your brain. You know, I think about people having fun things, doing fun things, and I think about all the people having, right this minute, they're getting hit by a car, right this minute, you know, some disease is taking its toll, and right, you know, and just all those horrible things you can imagine happening, you know, and right now it's happening to somebody. There's nothing I can do about it, but I mean, once you think about it, you almost feel obligated, you know, because you've almost made it. Ooh, now I've acknowledged you're in a wheelchair. I sort of have to do something about it, don't I? I mean, I have to offer help, or I have to do something. And so it's like once you start thinking about it, you're kind of stuck with this sense of empathy and acknowledgement. Like somehow it's like there should be it's like somebody's dead, and it's like they should have a proper burial almost, or some kind of, I mean, maybe it's just a one of these inefficient psychological reactions you have to things, but it's just a fact that it just makes you sense. Certainly, you feel the powerlessness, and part of it, again, I guess, from a selfish perspective, would be you sense your vulnerability, and you just kind of know that. I mean, I would say something now that I wouldn't have the imagination to say before, but you're going to have your 911 moment. Just like you have your 15 minutes of fame or whatever. Well, the more likely thing you're going to have than that 15 minutes, because you're really probably never going to have that, is you're going to have your 911 adventure, maybe more than one of them. And yeah, that's just not a great thing to have to sit here and acknowledge, that I'm sitting here just waiting for whatever, the blood vessel to burst, the bullshit to happen, and fuck. Yeah, there's nothing you can say about it except to say that sucks, and so you're, like I said, it just makes you instantly suspect of the reasonableness of the circumstance you're in and why you're in it. What did I do to deserve that? Impending doom. I don't remember signing anything that said, well, and now you're subjecting yourself to impending doom. I don't really want to be subjected to impending doom. So I guess that's, in a sense, it starts to give you a sense of this. This isn't a rational place to be. This isn't who thought this was a good idea? And then you start asking those kind of questions and getting the bullshit. Well, it's an expression of our love. Well, what does that mean? And then you find out, oh, it just meant that Daddy got horny and Mommy got kind of vaguely interested. Or whatever women do. I'm not quite sure. I don't know whether maybe it's all pretending. Who knows? It's hard to tell sometimes. Hard for me to tell. Sorry. Good, bad. They just, I don't know. Well, whatever. Don't want to even get into that discussion because again, this whole man-woman thing has just become so stupid, in the sense that the only people allowed to speak on the subject are fanatically insane women haters and fanatically insane man haters, and everybody else is just shut up. These are the only people who have a right to argue, are people who are insanely positioned, and will not ever say anything reasonable. So it will only be a conversation between two completely unreasonable positions. So, yeah. Oh, solar panels. But at least, see, these are on the ground. That's where the panel should be. It's on the ground, pointing to the sun. Yes, much more efficient. Not on your little individual I own them roofs. And you don't even own them, which is the funny part. It's just no. It's just irritating to have to say there's no point, because that's sort of the point, is that I am saying this shouldn't be that hard to manufacture into a pill. Okay, having a sense of knowing that what's in it for me is kind of crap, because everybody has to live in everybody else's toilet, in a sense. Okay, we're all in the same house, and we all got to live in with each other's bullshit, and you just can't win by degrading somebody else's existence. It just doesn't work that way. We have to complement each other's existence, not degrade each other's existence. And then understanding this whole vulnerability thing, and that deserve has nothing to do with it, and that we have to try to, where we can, make deserve have something to do with it, and reward people doing good things, right things, and discourage people doing stupid things, like having kids they can't afford to take care of, and obliging the whole society to grind to a halt almost to take care of their needs. I can become as dysfunctional as imaginable, and somehow society should spend millions or even billions of dollars on me because I'm the special cat. They do that with these animals too. Is another thing that you're just saying. It's just so insanely stupid. Yes, the story is tragic. The dog was mistreated. All these horrible things happened to it, and then they'll spend not just $1,000. They'll spend $20 or $30 or $40,000 on one dog because his little hero dog is the poster child dog. It's just so insane. And that's all this stuff that, this is really consequential, just as the whole economic stuff, the whole idea that we have so many people working, doing nothing productive. Stuff, just this what's in it for me stuff for some corporation, all this engineered waste. You get brochures from things, and the thing cost them $3 to make. And you're saying, so you're going to sell me something, and I paid for that brochure, right? I paid for the people who made it. I paid all this, and you're saying, I don't want to pay for all that crap. I just want to get a roof on my house or something like that, You just can see all that waste. And it's real, because it means you have to go to work twice as long to pay your bills, because everything's twice as expensive as it should be, because you're paying a bunch of people to do work that's unproductive, even destructive. So many people now have jobs where they're just calling your phone, 1 in a million chance that they're going to make $10, and it's just insanely unproductive nonsense is tolerated. Where's the reward and punishment? There's no system, there's no mechanisms, so people are encouraged to cheat because their crime pays, and essentially, we have a civilization where crime pays, and being honest and playing a good game will just get you in trouble. Will just turn you into a loser. Okay, because you can't play the game that way. You'll lose, and that's like sort of glaring, and it's just very disappointing to leave things that way. To say, okay, that's the world we're just going to keep farting new kids into. Is a world where you're not going to be able to succeed or thrive as a decent, honest person, who just wants a fair deal. That person is not going to get anywhere. All right, sort of the point. So I don't know if I need to beat this to death. It's just, again, I don't want to formula, the argument, and I certainly don't want to just overtly lie, like most things are just lie about performance, or how they just cheat to get to the destination. I don't want to cheat logic to get to the destination. I don't want to just use a propaganda, or use the, again, it's like saving, people are starving in some country, and we come to the rescue and blah blah blah, save them, and the whole point is what you give them, the UN food. There's a ton of people, like 1 billion, living on UN food, and the fact is they're just going to convert that food into more babies that they can't take care of, and you're going to have to feed. So there's just a flat out almost evilness to it, in the sense you're making the problem worse. You're feeding the disease. It's like somebody has an infection and you feed the microbes. You know, that's, you know, it's just going to kill the host quicker. So you got to come up with a better solution. You got to come up with a better way to help than to, you know, I don't know. It's like fixing a broken leg on a criminal or something. I don't know how to. You have to recognize the real threat and the real problem. The real problem is there's too many people, and more importantly, the people that are having people are ill-equipped to do it. And so they're not going to make productive assets to the population. They're likely to make those people who are sucking more out than, you know, vampires, parasites, leeches, than they are to make something that's producing value. You know, so you got more golden egg eaters than you have golden egg hens. Something like that. Anyway, so yeah, so you need kind of like an energy guide. You know, there needs to be some kind of fact checker that shows up and says, this is the real effect of your charity, is that in 5 years this is what the world will look like. You know, the problem will be bigger and more expensive, obviously. And so yes, you help somebody in the short run, but by helping them in the short run, they ran over more stuff in the future. So they made more of a problem. They're going to spill more milk. So you feed them the milk, they're going to spill the milk, and they're going to make a mess out of the milk. Well, whatever. There's some better. See, that's the whole thing. I guess I ought to spend some time constructing more perfect analogies to be more effective in communicating. So that's a whole part of this conversation. I'm not just pointing out how frustrating it is. I understand that, you know, I can't say that every bit of engineering you do to conversation is negative. I'm just saying that in the real world, that seems like all it's for is to create clickbait, so to speak, to create the illusion of a solution and all that kind of crap. And I'm just lamenting the fact that who wants to play that game of who can trick people more efficiently, you know, because that's not what you want to do. You don't want followers. You want partners, or however you want to put it. So, kind of thing. Blah, 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 blah. Alright, so that's probably enough of a video. Yeah, leave it at that. Sort of. I mean, there was more I wanted to get to, and but I just, yeah, I'm just not. I'm just, yeah, it's just not falling out of me as it sometimes does. So it's probably best to leave it alone until I give it a better path for falling out by engineering a better stream through my brain that's more on one subject. I guess that's part of the problem. It's just that I've sort of blended a whole bunch of concepts and cheated the argument a little bit, all of the arguments, by blending them all together. But anyway, who cares? It doesn't matter. I'll have another chance, no doubt. Well, there's some doubt, but I mean, you know, slim doubt that I won't be back again to try again and maybe do it better. But I guess that's part of what I wanted to say, was that it almost seems like there's so much randomness to it that I could almost do anything. I mean, I could just look around and say, okay, well, there's a pen that doesn't write. I still have on my desk for like 2 months, and I know it doesn't write. It's still here. There's something to wonder about. Those little inefficiencies of our own function. But, you know, pen. I could say the word pen. I could write the word pen. You know, I could do something, and it's going to fuck with your brain. Just something that's stupid is somehow going to change the flow inside of you. Your neurons are now fucked up by this pen. You know, just me waving it around could make me less effective or more effective in getting my message across. Just something stupid like this probably has more control over how I affect you than what I'm actually saying. You know, this can have more influence. This object, you know, this nothing on you or your day or whether you're happy or sad. This stupid thing, you know, can have more of an effect. And if I would have chose something else, like, I don't know, a piece of metal, sharp and pointy, you know, I just use it for prying stuff and digging holes and things. It's all kind of broken. Or really old, crappy, I don't know, scissors are supposed to cut anything that cut almost nothing. Yeah. Scissors. Well, I'm just saying, see this stuff, all these choices, okay, they sort of were choices from my perspective, but obviously the universe, this was inevitable, that I picked this up, was inevitable. It was all part of the tornadoes and the hurricanes and the butterfly. It all adds up to, yes, he was going to do this. But the fact is that this versus something else that could have happened if the universe was a different place, a little tiny bit different. If one of those fucking butterflies would have just dropped the fuck dead, I would have picked up something else. And something else would have happened in your brain. I would have picked up, like, you know, use tissue. Ew. You know, and that would have affected you completely differently. If it was in this different order. If I would have been used tissue first and then scissors, that would change everything. That was sort of the underlying theme, was the conversation just about how difficult this is when you're competing with all this nonsense, you know, all this irrelevant crap, like people who notice this background or know, hey, there's a board on it, you know, his hair isn't combed, blah blah. I mean, all the little bullshit that somehow matters, you know, and the stuff that matters gets lost under all of this noise created by stupid symbols and reactions to, oh, it's red. Red is scary. It's aggressive. Red wants to rape me. You know, some kind of, you know, that's all. You know, that's the difficulty here is there's so much noise. You know, it's that how do you do something that can rise above it? Alright, anyway. So even though I didn't really talk about that, yeah, that was the point of the video. But anyway, we'll try again. Whatever. Go about your business of being distracted and distorted and diverged and deflected in your adventure by a bunch of random crap. Virtually random. Pseudo random. Yeah. Because you're really not going to have a choice. That's the funny part. You're not going to have... Anyway, get all kinds of marvelous things from China. Anyway, I haven't lost it yet. It's pretty cool. It is turning into, like, whatever that space metal is. Some kind of copper or something. Anyway. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So we'll leave it. Show more. I mean, I saw the link there. I can say, alright, I should probably do a couple more of these useless images. But this is like consolidating all of this psychological manipulation, you know, the red versus the blue pen, and they figured out statistically the blue pen produces 10.7% more, blah blah blah. So all this is just formulated to manipulate, trigger reflexes. And but the funny part is, again, like I said, the culture is becoming so diverse that none of this can be very effective anymore, because we don't have any common reflexes anymore. There's nothing like a common reflex, a common perception of right and wrong, or almost anything. It's becoming less and less common, let's just put it that way, because we're becoming so diverse in our experience, and so much so, we're not even speaking the same language, so concepts aren't even, some languages don't even have a history of acknowledging the existence of certain concepts. I mean, you can sort of see that in languages when people are communicating. All of a sudden they throw in a few English words. They're speaking Japanese and then they say, Kleenex. Like they never had one. It's just kind of funny. They don't have a word for it or something. I'm just using it as an example. I'm sure they had something. But the point is, they can't even conceptually relate to something that's an actual word in your language. They don't have a word for that. It seems kind of incredible to think that they couldn't have a word for, like, clothes dryer, some kind of. But anyway. So anyway, there's another problem is, redundancies and patterns that get stuck in you. You get rigid, you get stuck in your patterns. Anyway, till next time. And such. Yeah, it's really enough. I think so. So, I like to wish that you get what you deserve, but that's not in the cards. Probably. So, till the next time.